Thank you, Avidia. And good morning, Team TSTA. You know, more than ever, we are called to unite all teachers, unite all education support professionals, and unite all educators in Texas to vote education first. That's what makes us Team TSTA. It gives us an opportunity to be the catalyst in our communities as lead organizers and change agents to truly make public education a priority in every election in the state of Texas and November. A few months ago, Texas's main snake oil salesman, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He must have been feeling sorry for himself because he went on another one of his rants. His audience, a group of eager school privateers, just his kind of people. And he apparently was frustrated that he's not been able to pass vouchers or the bathroom bill or education funding deeply enough. State officials just like him. And he made it clear that electing Patrick clones was his primary goal for this election. Enough to keep you awake tonight or on your long rides back home after this HR? I don't know what is. But just think about that. Have Greg Abbott, a Dan Patrick clone in the governor's office. Patrick clone as Speaker of the House as well? No. In Washington, we have a president who may be even worse than Dan Patrick. Yes, Team T, we are living in a dangerous world. More dangerous as we speak. Donald Trump about education, or apparently any of the social justice issues that impact every single one of our students. He saddled us an education secretary in Betsy DeVos, a secretary of education who has never set foot in a public school before she became secretary and is ignorant of basic education issues, so ignorant that she embarrassed herself at the Senate confirmation hearing. And then most recently, that's 60. But you see, she was too clueless to realize that she was embarrassed. And after most people would have quietly just gone away. But she continues to stumble along. Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump have their way. Our neighborhood schools will be privatized. Federal money for low-income kids and kids with disabilities will shrink, and debt for college graduates will continue to soar. If that's not bad enough, we've witnessed her opposition and retreat on civil rights protections for assault victims on campuses, protections for our transgender students, and immigrant rights, to name a few. And then, of course, we have Ted Cruz. That's right, it's no coincidence it rhymes with boo. You know, Ted's main claim to fame has been engineering a costly shutdown of the federal government and losing a low down and dirty presidential race, Donald Trump. But along the way, he found time to give educators and public school children a hard slap. He slipped a provision into law creating a federal private school voucher program and tried unsuccessfully to include homeschoolers homeschool learners in it as well. Dan Patrick, Greg Abbott, Donald Trump, Betsy DeVos, Ted Cruz. Just like you, I'm tired of being stuck with these people and others just like them. And I'm sure that all of you are too, because elections do have consequences, and these officials and their misplaced priorities are a result of those consequences. But Team TSTA, this election year, this is our new political leaders. An election in which I'm urging every single educator, not just you in this room, not just you, of those that are members on our campuses, but every education employee across the state of Texas to vote education first. But before I talk about this election year, I want to remind you about some very important facts. You know, Dan Patrick, Greg Abbott, and Ted Cruz didn't win their elections, and Donald Trump didn't really carry Texas without the votes of many teachers and school employees. Patrick, Abbott, Cruz, and Trump, they couldn't have been elected without the support of educators. If you look at the maps of Texas for recent elections, you'll find that Abbott, Trump, and Cruz election returns in Texas's rural counties. And what's a major employer of hundreds of small Texas towns? The local public school. Patrick, Abbott, Trump, and Cruz also received the votes of many educators in surrounding counties who ran strongly. Some of our largest school districts are in the suburbs. We've seen the consequences for education. Over-testing, rising healthcare costs, repeated calls for privatization, and threats to our well-earned pensions. I respect everyone's right to vote and to base their vote on any issue of their choosing. And I also respect you not to vote. And as I suspect that many educators have chosen not to participate in recent elections, let me remind you, and all who believe either that their vote doesn't matter or that the right to not vote is an actual vote. I heard Eric Liu recently state, there is no such thing as not voting. Not voting is voting to be. As leaders in TSA, leaders in our professions, and leaders in our community, we must educate, and we must lead to organize the power of the vote in our communities to vote education. If you're an educator, parent, student, business owner, or any taxpayer in the state, we all have a vested interest to stand with our colleagues, stand with our students, for our schools. Team TST must assert ourselves like never before to public schools, and you, the dedicated professionals, are at the center of every turnout in our community. We must put a tax on public education, a tax on the civil rights protections of our students, a tax on our Constitution, a tax on the foundation of our democracy. Public school student. I'm reminded of the words of the late Martin Luther King Jr., who said, time when silence is betrayal. Sisters and brothers, if our educators are not standing with us, then they are standing against us. You know, the stakes for public education and our students and our profession are high in this election year. And if educators don't vote in the best interest of our profession and our students, educators don't vote education first, will. Here are some reminders of what's at stake. Governor Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick's Senate majority slammed the door last year on a proposal drafted by Speaker Joe Strauss in the House to increase state education funding by $1.8 billion. Both Abbott and Patrick are on the ballot this year, and they're supporting candidates for the Texas House who will hope that they will elect a Patrick clone to replace Speaker Strauss as a things first. Unless we vote education first. Under Abbott and Patrick's watch, the stakes and stress of STAR testing are as high as ever, and the new A2F campus grading system will put even more pressure on teachers and students. Things will get educators vote education first. Abbott, Patrick will continue to promote vouchers, privatization schemes will get worse unless educators vote education first. The state has lifted its cap on special education, but services thousands of special education students will more state education funding. Team TA, unless educators vote education first. Privateers will continue to seek changes to your well-earned pensions. Of your hard work, they'll try to convert your defined benefit into a risky 401k type plan. Yes, things will get worse unless we first. Make no mistake, this election fight will be tough. Patrick, Abbott, Cruz, and their privatization allies, they're not taking this election. And they fear organizing and numbers. This is why, before the recent primary elections, they launched an unprecedented campaign to suppress the educator turnout, to intimidate people just like us to exercise our constitutional right to vote. It was shameful, but they are shameless. This includes Attorney General Ken Paxton, who issued politically motivated, non-binding opinion that was designed to mislead educators into thinking that it was wrong for them to encourage other educators and encourage them to vote for pro-public education candidates. Ken Paxton, he'll also be on the ballot this November. Our enemies may try the same tactics again and again, but don't be afraid and don't be misled. We have the legal right to promote among our students, friends, family members, and colleagues. We can about of public education and which candidates deceive us with lip service. Team STA, it is our responsibility. Because public school across the state of Texas is a site of democracy. Educator in our public school, teacher of civics. It is our responsibility to demonstrate our citizenship in public, to a culture of voting. It's really important to educate yourself, candidates, but also about the education issues. Be sure to check out TSTA's PAC endorsements, both for the party primary runoffs and the November. Asking your colleagues to join us and organize to vote first. TSTA's PAC endorsements are based on one issue only: a commitment to and a record of support for our public students and all educators. For us as a union, it's not just good enough. If you stand for kids, yet refuse to stand for the adults who work with kids every single day, then you truly don't stand for kids. The TSTA PAC has already endorsed a number of legislative candidates of both parties and may endorse before the November election. Heard from my colleague, who's our endorsed candidate against Lieutenant Governor, to be here with us today to talk about his commitment to strengthening our public schools, not tearing them down with private. On our recommendation, NEA PAC has endorsed Beto O'Rourke. Beto's a congressman from my hometown in El Paso, and he's running for the U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz. Beto is a strong advocate for public schools, and unlike Cruz, he also opposes privatization. As we painfully know, school funding, privatization, and over-testing aren't the only issues challenging educators today. But to March, and TSTA continues to stand in solidarity with sisters and brothers across the country, including Kentucky, and now next week, Arizona. Our colleagues have been walking off their jobs to demonstrate for higher pay and education funding to protect their pensions. We share a lot of their issues and concerns. In Texas, we have the legal right to strike or collectively bargain yet. But power of collective action for us to organize and do our bargaining. The legislature isn't in session this year, and the legislature is where these issues must be addressed. But until the legislature is in session, we must take that to vote education first into every single campus in our locals and talk to every single employee in our school districts. If we don't want the state to waste our tax dollars on vouchers, then what we must vote? If we want to end the overtest, give teachers to teach, then we must more education funding to ensure that every student has a quality neighborhood public school, then we must. If we want to send Dan Patrick Packin and elect Mike here for Lieutenant Governor, who will put Texas first, then we must. Until the legislature is in session, we will continue to organize and do our marching in communities across the state. We will continue to stand and march for our lives. We will continue to stand and march for our students. We will continue to stand and demand professional respect. And we will continue to march into the legislative session, demanding public schools for every student. Why? Because we are Team TSTA. This is time. And we won't back down.